Hey guys, welcome back to the Mechan Hack Shack. We are working on Evo's front end bolt-on coilover kit today. Come along. Alright, so Evo's coilover bolt-on kit is about as easy as it gets. They got you a couple of towers, hardware kit, and brake extensions. Of course, you got the big King coilovers. We're going to be taking out these foam bump stops. I don't know what they're good for, not a whole lot really, but we're putting in the best. We're going straight to King bump stops. So on top of just trying to get a better suspension with coilovers and all the benefits of coilovers to put in this rig, this is the next reason why this change is necessary. This is the shock that we pulled out of here. It's 4.5 years old, but look, by hand, you can just squeeze it, and you shouldn't be able to do it that easily. And it barely has any rebound in it. So these shocks are shot. These are 4.5 years old, and done. So we gotta get something better in. We have the shocks out. We're gonna drop the suspension all the way down so we can get the springs out. We might need to loosen up the sway bar end links if that continues to hold it, but we'll see where we're at when we let this down. So one of the first steps to do to get this all set up in here is you get this plate. It's going to align with one of the holes up in here, and then you're going to drill out where the other two holes are. So I'm going to start with the pilot hole and then go up to the full size 7/16. Alright, so as we go to put in the shock mount, put it on top of the factory spring perch, and then we're going to rotate it backwards in order to get it to fit inside of the shock mount. However, there's plastic that's in the way, so you got to start grinding in order to make some room. You're just grinding out a few of these plastic ribs, and then keep pivoting it back. So we're going to grind a little bit here. After a bunch of grinding and test fitting, I think I got it pretty close here. So again, you put it on here, and you rotate it backwards, and all those fins that you cleared out, now let you get this seated all the way in. Let me get you a close-up of what I see from the inside over here. So the passenger side proved a little bit more challenging. We came up in here and did a lot of grinding out of the plastic. Came all the way up into the battery tray. So there's a lot cut out, and it was still very challenging to get it in there. The trick that we finally figured out was to loosen up the body mounts, and we rigged a whole thing here to get it up off the ground and use a bottle jack up in here. And now we're about to test to see how close we are, because getting the body out of the way will help let this rotate. And with it rotating, we'll let it get back, and then we can drop it down and hope that it fits. Maybe there's a little bit more that we might have to clean out there. We're going to put this tower in and get the bolt kit all in here. We got a 5/8 inch bolt to go on top. 1/2 inch bolts to go in the face, and 7/16 inch bolts to go on the top. You know, it took a little bit of wallowing out the holes on the top here. You know, if you start with this as your template, and you put it underneath here, it's a little bit challenging to know exactly where center is. I think you get a much better sense is if you get this tower in first, and then figure out where the holes are on the top side, because you can't move this bracket at all. This guy can pivot a little bit, so it can move to where you need it to, but this can't. So I think you're better off, instead of drilling these holes first, get this lined up, clear out all your plastic, and then get it bolted in somewhat close to where it's supposed to be. Mark your holes from the top, and it's going to be hard to drill it from the top, but you kind of get a better idea of where you need to end up. Like maybe start with a small hole and then wallow it in the direction that you need it to go. That's what I ended up doing there, is using a grinding bit to wallow the hole where I needed it to. And so now I think I'm going to be in pretty good shape. Oh, on the passenger side, we had to do a lot more grinding. The battery tray is over there, and you had to remove a lot of plastic out of the way. As a matter of fact, it got so bad that it was impinging into the battery compartment, even though we removed part of the surrounding part of the battery, so it was going to touch the battery. Obviously, you don't want to touch the battery, so at that point, we had to cut away some of the bracket. The instructions even say you got to be ready to finesse. On the bottom of the coilover, they give you a bracket, and this bracket is meant to bolt into your stock lower control arm bracket. This axle happens to already be set up with a lower shock mount that was meant for coilovers, so we're just going to use that. But in a stock system, you would use this bracket that they sent, and it bolts to the bottom of your existing shock mount, and it gives you a new location to put your coilover. We're not going to use it. This is already set up for it, so this goes away. I want to show you what I figured out for, and this worked for me again because this already has a shock bracket on it for these coilovers, and so you're going to have to just figure out, in your setup, exactly how many spacers to put and kind of washers. You do want everything tight in between the bracket. You want it tight for, so when you tighten it up, you don't want to just keep pinching that bracket. So the way I did it was bolt-in washer on the outside of the bracket, then through the edge of the bracket, a small sleeve. These are the sleeves that come with the King kit, so you'll see them already on your shock. A small sleeve there, then into the coilover, so you're going through the Heim, and then Evo included this big spacer washer. I put that one on the outside. I did that on the outside because I want, as this articulates, you want a little bit more space from the inside of that bracket. So the bigger spacer on the inside, there was still room before closing it, so then I did washer to get it inside of there. That was a nice tight fit. I kind of tapped it in to get it in there, and then bracket and washer and nut, and then you're going to tighten all that down. You got it. The first step with these bump stops is to measure 3 inches from the bottom of this bump stop spacer. And 3 inches up, we're going to put a straight line, then we're going to cut. Basically, these guys is what mounts inside of there. It's got an adjustable collar on them, so that way you get some adjustability to make sure that it bumps at exactly the spot that you want it to. Collar will sit on top, has a set screw to then set it in place. Same thing with the bottom. Basically, once you get it in there, you're going to then tap the collar to get it tight. And it's one of the easiest installs to really improve your bump stop smoothness up front. cutting, we cleaned it up, and then you want to test fit. Basically, you're looking for as flush of a surface as possible. That's pretty darn close. The more flush it is, the better, because then you'll have more surface area contacting and providing friction. The way that we're going to tell that we have this bump stop correctly aligned is we're going to bottom out the shock. Now we took off the coils over this and removed the gas. That's going to let us fully compress this and know exactly where it's going to end. We're going to then, probably collapse this to within about 1/4 inch, and then we're going to want our bump stop to be fully empty. You can see we're right here, and we want to be touching this, so we're lowering the bump, and just till we make contact, and then we're going to tighten up the collars. And the other thing to plan ahead for is that you want your gas charge Schrader valve accessible. This is how we ended up. Now that we got these coilovers in, a couple last things that we need to do, and that's get them set up to the right ride height. In this setup, we're really looking for the lowest height possible. So we're going to try to just dial this in so that they're even across both sides, and then we'll measure to make sure that we have a good rake from front to rear. So we might still have a little bit of adjustment to do, but a couple of things to note, right? The way that we're doing this side to side is we're measuring on both sides from the same location. So what we've chosen to do is from the top of the axle tube up through the inner fender, and we found a reference point that's going to be the same on both sides. So this is helping us make sure that both of our measuring tapes are the exact same angles, whether it's side to side or front to back. In any respect, we're just looking for comparative numbers, so we don't need to be exactly straight or from front to back or side to side. And so as we jack this up to get this measurement for a ride height measurement, we want to get off the jack stands that are holding up the frame. So we've lifted it up, and basically the springs and the gas is fully charged. So we already have this at 150 psi of nitrogen. And in our case, we're doing 250 uppers over 300 lowers. Different kits come with different sizes. 250 over 250 is the standard that you'd get from Evo. Sean has upgraded these ones, so he's gotten a little bit stiffer. So we're going to get a little bit more ride height out of it. Not sure how happy he's going to be about that, or more importantly, his wife. But we're going to get this, as low as we can. Because we do want a little bit of a rake, but we also want a good quality stance to be able to glide over everything. Because you know how I like to say, best way to not get hit, not be there. So here we are on this side. I measured this, and going up to our spots, I'm at 25 7/8. Sean, on your side, what were you?
I'm at 26.
26. So that's 1/8 difference. I have found that one rotation of a collar is about a 16th. So we're going to each do a rotation of the collar. And the reason why I want to do one whole rotation is because the collar has a set screw in it that tightens it up. You want that accessible. With the axle as low as it can go, we can pretty much get the adjustment we need just by rotating it by hand. We don't have to even use a spanner wrench. We might have been able to get away with using the spanner with it fully lifted up, but since it's super easy to drop it down and then jack it back up again, it's nice to just be able to use your hand and rotate it. So we'll take our measurements again. I'm at 25 15/16. I moved the 16th of an inch that I thought I was going to move. So now we'll just balance this out, and that's what you need. And then the last adjustment that you need to do is your these inner spacers in here. These actually stop the springs from compressing. And you basically want them just under halfway of where that upper spring is, and when you're at ride height. So right now we're a little bit higher than halfway. We want that a little bit lower than halfway. So we're going to bring these inner guys down, maybe 3/4 of an inch. Maybe 3/4 of an inch. Bring these down, and then we'll be set. These inner collars. You just get a little chisel in here, and you just start capping. You're going to bring the lower side down. Okay, I think it was touching the spring. The last few hits to get it snugged up on the rubber O-ring. I think that wraps it up for the coilover install. Evo's bolt-on kit, the bracket, it all bolted on. There was quite a bit of work, just to, quite a bit of work. It even says in the directions that be ready to work and have some finesse. We're going to do a lot of cutting on the passenger side here. You can see there's, it comes out. There's some foam that we sprayed up in here because we actually had to take out enough of the battery tray to where the battery was exposed. We just thought, you know what, why tempt fate and let a whole bunch of water rush in there? Let's go ahead and spray some foam. That's drying, and then we'll be able to trim it and get most of it out of the way, and then paint it black, and probably won't even notice that it's there. But these are the types of things that you got to do when you're doing a serious kit to have a great suspension, is be ready to do a bunch of mods. This was a takeoff axle, and so you're trying to adapt to a lot of different things that are going on. So be ready for a bunch of fun, trying to figure out and solve problems. Let me show you a close-up of all the cutting of the battery tray that we had to do. You see we cut all the way around, and most of it was for cutting for the bracket itself. And this is that foam that I talked about a moment ago. But then as we got it all set up and put the coilover in, we still had to come in and cut a whole bunch more of the battery tray out in order for the hose to fit in here. And the way they have it set up is they want this hose to wrap around the backside and then come down, and it mounts to the back of that bracket. There's a little cleat there for it to connect up to. These King bump stops were actually quite simple to put on. I mean, the hardest part was just measuring and cutting a straight line. On one side we got pretty lucky that one line was very straight, had very minimal grinding to do on it. The other side wasn't as straight, so it took a little bit more grinding to get that one flush. It's really important you want it flush, because you want this lower ring to have as much contact onto the bump stop bracket as possible. We again, you saw how we measured bringing the axle all the way up with the bump stop fully depressed, so we knew exactly where it was going to end its bump, and then we charged it up at 60 psi. That's how they come from King at 60 psi. So that's why we went with there. Additional thing that we did is we went ahead and put a paint pen mark on the ring, top and bottom, so that we can see if by chance they happen to be moving. Then we'll know to go tighten them up. And besides that, it was an amazingly easy install. This is new. Going air bumps is new for this rig. I've had air bumps in my rig for a while. Gary has also had air bumps on his rig for a while. They're amazing at slowing down your bottoming out without that jarring, lose your teeth type feeling. So definitely a really great thing to add to your Jeep. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comment on this. Tell us what you guys think if you're doing this. We appreciate all your comments. Alright, take it easy. Alright, so here's the kit. Alright, so before we totally... Alright, so King's bump. Alright, so on top of... Alright, so now that we have... Alright, so one of the first... Alright, so as we go to put in... Alright, so starting the... Alright, so we're going to put this... Alright, so I'm going to start... Alright, so on the... Alright, so the first step... Alright, so after cutting... Alright, so the way that we're going to... Alright, so to test the... Alright, so this is how we ended up. Alright, so now that we... Alright, so last few hits... Alright, so these King... There's a little bit of dirt in there. Huh?
Bye-bye bump stuff.
Oops. I just let the dirt all over the place.